Why do smart, highly capable people quietly sabotage themselves right before reaching a massive goal?
Right. Yeah.
Or maybe you've felt that strange, I don't know, background hum of unworthiness that creeps in when things in your life are going just a little too well.
Oh, absolutely. I think we've all been there.
So, like, we say we want success or lasting love or financial freedom, but the moment it's actually within our grasp,
We
we just inexplicably pull back.
we pick a fight.
Exactly. We pick a fight, we miss a deadline, we decide the timing just isn't right.
Yeah, it's this really quiet universal contradiction. And, when you look at it purely logically, it is completely baffling.
Right.
I mean, why would an organism actively prevent its own thriving? It just doesn't make sense.
And that is exactly the mystery we're unpacking in this deep dive today. Because the ceiling on your life, like the invisible limits you are feeling right now, they probably weren't built by your intelligence.
No, definitely not.
They weren't built by the economy or, your current circumstances. The hard science is pointing to something much stranger.
Yeah, it's wild.
The limits dictating your adult life were likely built by something that happened before you were 7 years old.
And we really need to establish right up front here, this isn't some motivational fluff.
Right. No toxic positivity here.
Exactly. We aren't going to tell you to just, think positive. We are talking about fundamental biology today.
Yeah.
If you want to understand why you pull back from the things you actually want, you have to look at how your brain was physically programmed during those first few years of life.
Okay. Let's unpack this programming phase. Because, frankly, the idea that my adult professional decisions are being secretly vetoed by my kindergarten self sounds, well, it sounds a bit hard to swallow.
I know, it sounds a little out there at first.
What is actually happening in a child's brain before age 7 that gives it that kind of lasting power?
Well, it comes down to the frequency of our brainwaves. So, as adults, you and I are mostly operating in what's called a beta brainwave state.
Beta, right.
Yeah, beta is active, it's analytical, it's conscious processing.
Hmm.
We have a prefrontal cortex, that logical front part of our brain, and it basically acts like a bouncer at a nightclub.
Okay, I like that analogy.
Right. So if someone comes up and tells you, you are a terrible person, your prefrontal bouncer evaluates that statement, realizes it's just, an angry colleague, and completely rejects it at the door.
So the bouncer keeps the bad data out of your subconscious.
Precisely. But here's the kicker. Before age 7, children don't have that bouncer.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. They operate almost entirely in a lower frequency brainwave state called theta.
Wait, theta? Isn't that like what happens when you're sleeping?
Basically, yeah. In an adult, theta is the state you enter right before you fall asleep or during deep hypnosis.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It is this highly programmable, sponge-like state. So for a young child, there is no analytical filter at all. None. Every repeated message, every moment of parental anxiety, every piece of praise or sudden shame, it just bypasses logic entirely.
Because the bouncer isn't on duty yet.
Exactly. The bouncer isn't even hired yet. So all that data gets written directly into the subconscious as an absolute, unquestionable rule about reality.
Honestly, that is terrifying.
It really is.
It means a casual, frustrated comment from a tired parent isn't just a fleeting memory for a toddler. It's being installed as base code in their operating system.
You're literally coding their brain.
And when you look at the research, like Dr. Bruce Lipton's work on epigenetics, the stakes get even higher.
Oh, Lipton's work is fascinating.
It really is. Because we used to think our genes were just locked blueprints, like you get what you get.
Right.
But his work showed that these early emotional signals, the stress or the safety a child feels, literally alter the chemical environment of their blood.
Yeah.
And that chemical environment interacts directly with the cells, literally turning certain genetic expressions on or off.
Yes. The environment is quite literally signaling the biology. If the emotional environment is constantly communicating danger or inadequacy, the biology physically adapts to survive a dangerous, inadequate world.
And bracing for impact.
Exactly. And Harvard psychologist Jerome Kagan spent decades backing this up from a behavioral perspective.
Right.
He found that the emotional patterns formed in those first 7 years become our default biological anchors. They become the baseline nervous system response.
It almost feels like, well, it's like we're walking around with a glass bowl placed over our head.
Oh, a glass bowl. I like that.
Yeah, like it was built around us in childhood out of those repeated messages. What adults celebrated, what they panicked about, what they shamed us for.
Right, right.
But because the glass is completely clear, you don't even know it's there.
You just look right through it.
Exactly. You look up, you see the open sky, and you genuinely think you are making free, conscious choices about your career or your relationships. But in reality, you're just bumping into these invisible walls that were erected decades ago.
That is a brilliant way to visualize it, because the tragedy of the clear glass is that since you can't see the walls, you just assume the limitation is you.
Yes.
Right. When you hit the edge of the bowl and fall back, you don't blame the invisible programming, you blame yourself for not working hard enough.
Or you blame the economy.
Or you decide you just aren't cut out for success. Yeah.
But hold on, I have to play devil's advocate for a second.
Go for it.
If this glass bowl was constructed that long ago,
Yeah.
how does it physically control my behavior today? I mean, I'm an adult. I have a conscious mind. I read the news. I set goals. I map out my week.
You do, but the conscious mind is vastly overpowered, like vastly.
How so?
Neuroscientists estimate that roughly 95% of our brain's processing happens below the threshold of conscious awareness.
95%.
95%.
That is absurd.
I know. The part of you that sets goals, the part that is listening to this deep dive right now, is operating on about 5% of the hardware. The vast majority of your daily actions, reactions, and assumptions are running on automatic programs.
And that's because of how the neural pathways are built, right?
Exactly. It's a physical process called synaptic encoding. Every time you have a thought or a reaction, a neural pathway fires.
Okay.
And when that happens repeatedly in childhood, the brain wraps that pathway in myelin.
Which is like insulation on a wire.
Spot on. It's an insulating layer that allows the signal to travel incredibly fast. So after thousands of repetitions, that simple little pathway becomes a massive paved neural superhighway.
Right.
Fast forward to adulthood, when your brain needs to make a decision, it doesn't want to burn energy forging a new logical dirt path.
No, it wants the fast route.
Exactly. It defaults to the paved superhighway. Not because it's the objective truth, but simply because it's familiar. It saves metabolic energy.
And the brain is aggressively defensive of those highways, isn't
Yeah.
it? It uses something called confirmatory encoding to protect the investment. Like, the brain actively filters out reality to generate evidence that proves the childhood belief is correct.
Right. The confirmation bias on steroids.
Yeah, it's the reticular activating system at work.
Yeah.
If your subconscious rule, your glass bowl says, I am not deeply lovable, your perceptual system will literally filter out the 10 people who showed up to support you.
You won't even see them.
You won't. And you will hyperfixate on the one person who left you on read.
Because the brain hates cognitive dissonance.
Yeah.
It desperately wants the outside world to match the inside map.
Right.
And researchers at the University of Texas at Austin actually mapped what happens when those two things clash.
Oh, the MRI study.
Yes. They found that when people face a choice that brushes up against one of these deep limiting beliefs, say, asking for a promotion, when your internal script says you aren't worthy, the prefrontal cortex, that logical bouncer we talked about, literally decreases in activity.
It just powers down.
It literally powers down.
So the logic center goes offline.
Completely. The amygdala and the emotional centers just hijack the brain. And what's fascinating and kind of insidious about this mechanism is that it doesn't feel like a malfunction.
No, it feels very real.
Right. When the emotional brain takes over, the limitation doesn't announce itself. It doesn't pop up in your head and say, warning, childhood trauma activated, preparing to self-sabotage.
Right. It masquerades as wisdom.
Yes.
It tells you, oh, I'm just being realistic, or I should probably get a few more certifications before I try this, or the economy is just too volatile right now.
It presents itself as a highly accurate, completely rational assessment of reality.
I have to push back here, though.
Okay, let's hear it.
Because this almost borders on telling people to ignore their own intuition. And that feels dangerous.
Fair point.
When my gut tells me this isn't a good time to take a massive risk like quitting a stable job to start a company or moving across the country for a relationship, how do I know that isn't just genuine wisdom? You're saying that physical gut feeling might just be my prefrontal cortex shutting down because I touched the glass bowl.
It's the most crucial distinction you can make, honestly. Real intuition is expansive.
Expansive, okay.
Yeah. It usually feels calm, clear, and grounded, even if the action is inherently risky.
Right, like a quiet knowing.
Exactly. But a trauma response dressed up as pragmatism. That usually carries a frantic energy, a tight anxiety, or a sudden, desperate need to withdraw.
Oh, that's a great distinction.
If your gut feeling consistently leads you to choose a smaller, safer, more isolated life, right at the exact moment a breakthrough is possible, that is not your intuition, that is the glass bowl protecting its boundaries.
Wow, that is profound. If the feeling always shrinks your world, it's not wisdom.
Exactly.
Okay, so if our own biology is essentially fighting against us to defend these old superhighways, how do we fix it?
That's the million-dollar question.
Right, because there's an entire industry built around solving this, and a lot of it seems to be based on completely unscientific myths.
Oh, so many myths.
Let's start with the idea that you have to have some dramatic, cinematic trauma to have these limiting beliefs in the first place.
That is a huge misconception. People think, well, I had a nice childhood, my parents loved me, so I shouldn't have these issues.
Right, the guilt of having a normal childhood.
Yeah. But the research clearly shows these invisible scripts form in completely ordinary, well-meaning families. It absolutely does not require abuse.
Really?
Yeah. It can be a parent who constantly models perfectionism, right? So the child learns that love is conditional on flawless performance.
Oh.
Or it can be a loving but intensely overprotective environment. The parent genuinely thinks they are showing love, but the biological message encoded in the child's theta state is, the world is inherently dangerous, and you are not capable of handling it alone. Stay small.
That makes so much sense. And that actually brings us to the biggest, most pervasive myth in the entire self-development world.
Let me guess, positive thinking.
Yes. The idea that if you just forcefully think positive thoughts, you could overwrite the bad programming.
Ugh, the mirror affirmation.
Right, stand in the mirror, look yourself in the eye, and repeat positive affirmations. But looking at the data, this can actually backfire.
It absolutely backfires.
Right.
The University of Waterloo conducted a fascinating study on exactly this.
Oh, I read about this.
Yeah, they had people with low self-esteem repeat positive affirmations. Statements like, I am a deeply lovable person, or I am destined for massive success.
Classic affirmation stuff.
Right. And the psychological result. Their moods and self-worth actually got significantly worse after the exercise.
Which completely contradicts the whole fake it till you make it philosophy. Why does it make them feel worse?
Because of the cognitive dissonance we discussed earlier, your subconscious brain is always listening.
Right.
If your heavily myelinated neural superhighway is built on the belief that you are fundamentally unworthy, and you stand in the mirror shouting, I'm a champion, your brain experiences a massive alarm bell of contradiction.
It's like, who are you kidding?
Exactly. It essentially says, liar. That is factually incorrect. And to protect you from this delusion, I am going to flood your nervous system with every negative memory and failure I have on file to prove you are unworthy. You cannot overlay a flimsy, conscious, positive thought on top of a reinforced, concrete subconscious highway.
You're just highlighting the painful gap between the script you are running and the script you wish you were running.
Precisely.
So if affirmations just trigger the brain's defense systems, are we stuck? Because for a long time, the scientific consensus was that by the time you hit 25, your brain was basically baked. The cement was dry.
That was the old dogma, yes. But the discovery of neuroplasticity changed everything.
Right, the brain's ability to rewire itself.
Yeah. A landmark study from UCSF demonstrated measurable neuroplasticity, actual physical changes in the neural architecture, literally the growing of new dendrites in people in their 60s and 70s.
That is incredible.
It really is. Your brain is never done changing. The old superhighways can be pruned, and new pathways can be built at any age.
And the stakes for doing that rewiring are incredibly high. Look at the Edinburgh University study.
Oh, that's a brilliant one.
Right. They tracked 4,000 people over several decades. They wanted to know what actually predicts a successful adult life.
And what did they find?
They found that the self-concept beliefs formed in childhood, that glass bowl, were a stronger predictor of adult career and relationship success than the person's socioeconomic background, and even stronger than their educational attainment.
Because it dictates the absolute ceiling of your reality. And since the conscious mind is blind to it, we have to look at how this actually manifests in everyday behavior.
Right.
How do these beliefs orchestrate our lives without our permission? A Cornell University study showed that people unconsciously seek out social and professional environments that match their limiting self-concepts.
It's a self-fulfilling prophecy of choice patterns.
Exactly.
Let's bring this down to earth with some of the case studies from the behavioral research. Like, how does this look in a boardroom or on a date?
Okay, yeah. Let's look at Sarah, for example. Right, Sarah.
She's a brilliant marketing strategist, But she had a massive limiting belief around money. Growing up, her father always talked about wealthy people with this bitter mix of admiration and deep resentment.
Right, so the encoded message was that money corrupts.
Yes. So in her 30s, every time Sarah was about to land a major corporate client, she would panic and underprice her proposals.
Ouch.
She told her friends she was just being realistic for the market. But her brain was actually sabotaging her income because earning significantly more than her family meant she was abandoning her roots.
She was choosing the pain of under-earning over the subconscious threat of tribal exile.
Exactly.
Then there is James, a high-functioning project manager. His subconscious belief was that connection equals abandonment because his father left when he was 5.
Right.
So as an adult, his nervous system would flag any deep romantic connection as a literal threat to his survival.
It saw love as danger. Yeah. In 6 different relationships, the exact moment things got genuinely intimate, he generated exit behavior. He would pick fights or suddenly decide the timing was wrong.
And he was probably completely blind to the fact that his brain was orchestrating an escape to avoid the loss it was mathematically wired to expect.
Absolutely blind to it. I think we all have a little bit of James in us when a relationship gets too real, honestly.
For sure.
And finally, Marcus, the data analyst, he grew up in an environment where being visible or standing out meant being criticized and attacked.
So he believed safety meant staying hidden.
Right. He never spoke up in meetings. When he finally started testing that boundary, he found out his colleagues actually respected his insights. The capability to lead had always been there. The belief was just acting as a blindfold.
Yeah.
And the tragedy is, this isn't rare. Yale University released a stat showing 70% of adults feel they aren't living up to their potential. 70%.
That is wild. And you know what the common denominator is in Sarah, James, and Marcus?
What's that?
It's the engine that keeps the limiting belief alive. And that engine is avoidance.
Avoidance.
Avoidance is the mechanism that maintains the glass bowl. Every time Sarah underpriced her services, every time James ran from intimacy, they were avoiding the acute discomfort of touching the edge of their programming.
Right.
But here's the biological catch. When you avoid the edge, the brain learns that avoidance equals survival.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So the bowl doesn't stay the same size, it slowly contracts, your world gets smaller, and the anxiety gets worse.
So how do we stop avoiding and actually remodel the glass bowl? If positive affirmations are useless and just white-knuckling it doesn't work, what are the science-backed protocols for physically rewiring these neural pathways?
Well, the behavioral science lab at Stanford proved that targeted, specific practices can actually build new neural pathways in just 8 to 12 weeks.
That's incredibly fast, actually.
It is. The goal is to build a competing neural pathway that eventually becomes the new default. And the first protocol is what researchers at Columbia University call belief archaeology.
Which means working backward. Right. Because you can't just ask your subconscious, hey, what's wrong with you?
Exactly. The belief is invisible, so you have to start with the visible symptom, the stuck behavior.
Okay.
Where are you chronically procrastinating? Where are you repeatedly pulling back? The protocol requires you to actually write this down.
Not just type it, but handwrite it.
Yeah, because the physical act of writing activates different integrative parts of the brain than just passively thinking. You ask yourself, what would someone have to fundamentally believe to be true about themselves to consistently make this specific choice?
I love that. You start with the crime scene of the behavior to track down the motive.
That's a great way to put it.
But once you uncover the belief, let's say it's, I am not capable of handling conflict, you don't just tell yourself it's false. You have to do an evidence audit.
Right. The Beck Institute emphasizes this heavily.
Yeah. You list the evidence that supports the belief, but then you are forced to list every single piece of evidence from your life that contradicts it.
And the reason that works is because you are manually overriding the brain's confirmatory encoding. Remember, your perceptual filter has been aggressively discarding any evidence of your competence or lovability for decades.
Right.
The evidence audit forces your logical prefrontal cortex to look at the discarded data and actually process it.
But it's not all just cognitive, right? It's heavily physiological. The Institute of Heart Math focuses a lot on the vagus nerve and somatic check-ins.
Oh, this is vital. Limiting beliefs live in the body. When you approach the edge of the glass bowl, you feel it, a sudden tightness in the chest, a drop in the gut, a flushed face.
That panic feeling.
Yes.
Yeah.
That is your emotional brain sending a threat signal down the vagus nerve. The practice here is to pause before making significant decisions, scan the body, and notice that physical sensation as information, not as truth.
Information, not truth.
Exactly. You take a slow, deep breath to intercept that vagal threat signal. You are actively training your nervous system to realize that the discomfort of growth does not equal imminent death.
Which perfectly sets up the Stanford research on deliberate boundary testing. This is honestly the most relieving part of the research for me because it lowers the bar so beautifully.
It really does.
Breaking the glass bowl isn't about smashing it with a hammer by taking some massive, terrifying leap that completely dysregulates your nervous system. It's about small, incremental exposure.
It's taking the dirt path instead of the superhighway, just once.
Right. If your invisible script says your opinions are worthless, you don't need to volunteer to give a keynote speech tomorrow.
No, please don't.
Right. You just need to speak up once in a low-stakes team meeting. You brush up against the glass, and when the world doesn't end, when you aren't laughed out of the room, your brain registers a new data point.
It wraps a tiny little piece of myelin around a new pathway.
Exactly. It's tapping the glass gently over and over until you realize the structure just isn't sound.
And you must not do this in a vacuum. Dr. Daniel Siegel's work at UCLA in interpersonal neurobiology highlights the power of relational processing.
Because we're social creatures.
Exactly. We are fundamentally social creatures with mirror neurons. Taking these shameful hidden beliefs out of the dark and speaking them aloud to a trusted person, a friend, a partner, a therapist, literally accelerates neural integration.
Wow.
When your internal fear is met with external empathy and understanding by another human being, it rewires the brain's safety parameters much faster than trying to process it alone in your journal.
So when we step back and look at all of this, what does it actually mean for us? We've covered everything from the undefended theta state of a 5-year-old to the synaptic superhighways and vagus nerve threat signals dictating our adult choices.
Yeah, we covered a lot of ground.
But the ultimate takeaway is deeply optimistic, isn't it?
Yeah.
The limits you feel right now are very likely just a childhood script, a glass bowl you simply couldn't see.
And the beauty of neuroplasticity is the definitive biological proof that the brain is never done changing. The old defaults were built accidentally, but new defaults can be built deliberately.
The glass can be shattered. And this matters profoundly for you listening to this deep dive right now. Whether you are in your 20s, right in the thick of building your adult identity, or you're in your 40s or 50s, feeling deeply stuck in a lifelong pattern that you just assumed was your personality.
It's not your personality. It's just programming.
Yes. Identifying the exact moments where you repeatedly pull back is the very first step to expanding your reality. The ceiling can move.
It is entirely about trading the hollow comfort of your familiar limitations for the temporary discomfort of finding out what you are actually capable of.
So we want to leave you with a final thought to chew on today. Something to think about the next time you feel that gut instinct telling you to play it safe.
Yeah.
If your most stubborn, deeply held, quote-unquote, realistic limitations were actually just an invisible script handed to you before you were 7 years old, what is one thing you have completely ruled out for your life that might actually be entirely possible for you right now?
These thoughts, these questions, they don't have to stop here. Geeks Mindset has many more podcasts and videos just like this one. Subscribe to the channel and explore other episodes. They all flow the same thoughtful way.
Exactly.
If this podcast felt genuinely useful to you, share it with even one person in your life. That one share can bring a real change in someone's life. And it helps Geeks Mindset reach more people who truly need this.
It really does.
If this brought you real value, look for the join button right next to the Geeks Mindset logo below this video. Click it and become a member of the Mindset Support Circle.
Yeah, please do.
Your support helps honest mindset awareness reach thousands who are silently struggling. Geeks Mindset moves forward because of you. Thank you so much from the heart for being here.